the head-to-head, because that is the first condition for tiebreakers when we finish the seeding after the round-robin phase.
That's right, same as last year. Head-to-head is so crucial, which is why the pressure is going to be on for both of these players. And we saw last week, it's got to be said, pretty big missteps because of the pressure being on in slightly different ways, it's got to be said. FroStee, we saw him just rope out and miss a setup with Twin Slice for lethal. It wasn't so much he made the wrong play because he was stressed out, he just didn't make the right play quick enough in order to be able to get the win, which I think is more redeemable for the most part. You just need to make sure that you're starting your turns that little bit quicker so that you have time to get all the attacks in. DawN, however, just kind of crumbled last week, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I very clearly remember, and so do you, because Tyler had to emphasize the end of it with a flex and dancing on stream. But yeah, for anybody who missed that match, DawN had a crucial error as Druid where, from what we could see, it seemed like he just miscounted lethal
by a
far
long
off.
shot.
It's like he was imagining there was an additional minion for Savage Roar. I think he ended up at 4 or 5 off of lethal, and after he realized that it wasn't enough, just absolutely crumpled on the stream. It was painful to watch. He was completely stressed out. And later on in the weekend, he managed to get a win for himself, which is really good to hear. But it's still far from out of the woods for DawN here.
Thing is, though, for DawN, who is one of the most vibrant players that we have here in Grandmasters, they are overall a very taciturn bunch. They don't show a lot of emotion on stream, but DawN, we got to see him smiling a lot. He seems like a very jovial person. He looked like a completely different man in that second series of the week. There was no emotion from him. He looked kind of defeated, to be perfectly honest. But even in that state where he was looking a lot more downtrodden overall, he played some very good Hearthstone. It was a glimpse of the old school DawN that we know who can get the job done. And therefore, as long as he takes it slow and steady here, tries to just get the stakes out of his head, he should be, I think, in a very strong position to take the win against FroStee.
Indeed. DawN is one of the original players in the Korean scene, which itself is one of the original scenes in Hearthstone. Korea has been having their own local tournaments ever since the release of the game. They've had strong players from the beginning of competitive Hearthstone all the way up until now. And DawN, I think, is very well beloved in the community. There's a meme surrounding him, like one DawN equals a certain amount of won, their currency, because he was the first one to win that amount of money in a tournament. And here he is still clocking away in 2020 at the top level of Hearthstone. And now he's brought to the table pretty much the 4 classes that we're seeing across APAC the most ended.
Yeah, the spice in this particular series, I think, comes from FroStee on the other side, who has brought the Priest, one of only 2 players to do so, I believe, alongside Alutemu this week. And I think as a direct result of that, we see him not ban the Warrior, because he wants to go for getting rid of the Demon Hunter instead. A lot of his decks are a little bit slow, a little bit vulnerable to the aggression from Demon Hunter, like the Hunter and the Druid that we see here. Whereas the Priest, although there's a lot of disagreements along the way, amongst the players who play Priest the most, obviously Xananan, Moyen, Tic Tac, that whole squad, they seem to believe that Priest is very strongly favored up against Warrior.
Yeah, very succinctly put. Priest is the wild card for APAC. Only 2 players having brought it, aside from FroStee. There is Alutemu, who we will be seeing later on this weekend. But I'm just surprised that it wasn't caught onto by more players. Of course, everybody has done their fair share of testing. I believe that. And maybe they just don't think Priest is good enough. But I think it is a particular deck that if you're not one of the savants and one of the loyal Priest stands, you probably do feel like it's not actually favored against all these classes that others are saying that it does completely destroy Warrior and so on. But FroStee has put his face in it. So I would really love to see the Priest versus Warrior matchup to give us a little bit of the experience firsthand.
Yeah, cannot wait to see a little bit of Priest action. Something I thought I would never hear myself say, and 2 years ago, Derek would be loath to hear me even admit it. But now for DawN, a deck that we've seen be reasonably powerful so far in the Highlander Hunter, that I think could actually be his trump card in the matchup. Again, it's obviously Conquest, so you can only take 1 win with a deck. But up against Priest, I think he's got a fantastic matchup. Druid, I think he's got a fantastic matchup. And then he's got the Mirror at the very last hurdle. So I think this is a very strong deck and a decent first queue to just try and get a win with and give you a strong state of mind.
Yes, if you have a deck that has good matchups across the board, I tend to like starting with it in Conquest as well for momentum. No hard numbers supporting that, but morale is probably something that we don't discuss enough in Hearthstone. It is a big thing.
It really, really is. And to get things going here for DawN, lovely, aggressive start. And even though all these 1-drops are a great way to get the ball rolling, the card I'm really liking the look of at the moment is Dragonbane coming down on turn 3.
Ooh.
That is very difficult to remove for a Druid.
True. And even if the hero power won't always hit face, if the Druid has development, at the very least, you're removing a Druid minion, which is just good. But we can already see FroStee has the wild growth into Glowfly.
He does, but DawN has potentially the answer in his own right in Zephyrus here.
Right.
I'm trying to think what it could offer on like the 2-mana slot. I guess if he can coin it out, then he can go for a Lightning Storm. Yeah.
There's also an opportunity to deviate here and just go coin Zephyrus Power of the Wild. And that puts his entire board not only dealing more damage now, but able to value trade against Glowflies should FroStee play it.
Even though I think DawN can have the fairly strong read here of Glowfly being a likely play to come down from FroStee, he still ends up just going with the coin into the Dragonbane. And to be fair, even if he left himself the option of coin Zephyrus Lightning Storm, that sounds like a pretty bad play, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it's very slow. It locks up mana for the following turn. And now he's still got a decent amount of ways to remove. Hero power, of course, can be targeted onto one of the Glowflies. Dragonbane is very likely to remove another, and he could use Corrosive Breath to deal with a third. Dragonbane itself deals with a fourth, and the Blazing Battle Mage deals with a fifth.
Oh, you're right. It just kind of cleans up almost everything here and keeps the pressure going. And most importantly, saves the Zephyrus.
The order DawN has gone about this signals to me that he actually wants the Dragonbane hero power to go face, so giving himself best chance, second best chance. Okay, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit
wanted
messy.
to hit him. Yeah.
Because if you want it to go face, then you attack with the Dragonbane first, right? Just to guarantee it goes face. It was just kind of, it wasn't incentivizing one or the other.
Uh-huh. And he had clear ways to maximize his odds of getting one or the other.
Yeah.
That is kind of a win for FroStee in the sense that it took up DawN's entire turn and a lot of resources, but FroStee doesn't have the refill, no Mount Cellar, no card draw in hand. Wow!
And for DawN, yeah, you just keep out playing your decent-sized minions here. This is all more than good enough.
So at first I was looking at the Fairy Dragon because it just seems better than Ooze to play this turn. But I'm thinking it's just Ooze this turn, and then the Primordial for the next turn. Shore up your turn 6, lead into a Brand turn, save Zephyrus for shenanigans, which you probably expect to come down on the other side.
Not a bad draw in the Rising Winds, but we cannot see a repeat of the last games where you miss out on all the actual threats. But now FroStee has the Mount Cellar, but there's the poison in the way, Gia.
Yeah, I think he's got to hold on to it.
You got to hold.
This turn is still fine. He can still just draw. He can go if he wants to Savage or Hero Power to deal with the poisonous minion.
Poison.
And then he can just absolutely go off with a Mount Cellar next turn. Turn 6, I guess, is not particularly scary yet from the Hunter. If this were going into Dino Tamer Brand turn, I would be much more hesitant to suggest holding off. But I think the timing is pretty clear on this one. You can afford to take a little bit more damage and go for the big plays on the next turn.
Time waits for no one.
Is he really considering just playing?
I love it from FroStee.
Yeah.
Very measured approach.
A good draw again.
Yeah, with that, he doesn't even need to go for Savage Roar now because he can just Crystal Power Moonfire on the Primordial Explorer next turn.
Yeah.
seems solid. Versus a random dragon, which might not even be playable this turn.
Yeah.
Semi-random.
I was wondering if there was any way you could set up lethal with Zephyrus this turn for Dynamo Tamer Brand next turn, but just developing your biggest thing. Getting too fancy there.
Zephyrus would probably have just given Argus there.
Yeah. Well, here it is, the turn for FroStee to try and pull things back. He gets his own worse Primordial Explorer there.
Oh yeah. Crucial that he doesn't have any Iron Bark available. Xor is huge though.
Look at this development. He's closing in on lethal next turn.
Yeah. He really is. DawN could say, you don't have the Savage Roar, go King Crush Face, but I think there's an opportunity to possibly go Zephyrus Brawl here. Or is there a way to manipulate it to give Frost Nova? That would be absolutely nuts. But I don't think it gives Nova unless it sees that there is lethal coming from the other side. It doesn't recognize Savage Roar in hand.
It's just going to offer Brawl. Which, to be fair, is pretty good here. If you just clear the board, as long as they don't have Overflow, I think you're in a great position as DawN.
Right. The only disasters for DawN if there is Zephyrus Brawl is Mount Seller surviving, which is low odds, or the, as you said, Overflow off the top, or in hand.
There's no way he can hit lethal with Wind Fury, Storm Hammer. It's kind of close, but not quite there.
Quickly.
See DawN heavily considering it. Goes Hero Power. He's believing in Frost Nova, I think. If not, this is just Shadow or Death.
Whoa!
Not. Oh, the madness! I didn't even think of that! That is so good! Was that so good? I'm confused.
I don't know, Gia!
I didn't even think about it, but
I mean, I'll tell you one
this
thing.
allows DawN to... Yeah,
he wanted the Frost Nova.
Mm-hmm. He definitely did. FroStee can't deal the lethal this turn. Only 3 minions for payoff with Soul of the Forest, but I think he absolutely needs to take it here. And remove... Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is the only...
Yeah, he has to. There's just too many ways he dies if he doesn't remove the big ol' whelp. He's not setting up lethal for himself for the next turn.
Deliberately goes with the bad, quote-unquote, trade as well in order to shuffle Zixor Prime into his deck, which is, I think, a good idea. It's a good draw off the top.
Yeah, they're very limited, impactful top decks for FroStee now. Oh, tough spot again for DawN because he knows there are top decks for lethal, so he can't, you know...
Right, so if he goes...
play the brand without worry.
Freeze one of the minions. Stormhammer, smack him in the face. Hero Power, you set up lethal. It's really only the Iron Bark that you're afraid of then? Or Overflow into Iron Bark in the worst case?
What about just Overflow? Not a bit scary as well.
Is it cold in the shadows?
No, well, you do have the brand in that case. Yeah, you're right. It would have to involve 2 cards. For him to get out of this one. Whereas the brand dies, FroStee would have killed DawN with a single Savage Roar. There's a ton.
It's good, Gia, but it's not good enough.
Well, he can... yeah, there's no way to taunt and put enough health on your minion that it doesn't just die to the Stormhammer.
Well, no, you can taunt the frozen minion, right? And then trade in.
Oh, sure.
Which means he's alive?
He's alive!
And so he has outs for lethal?
Yes, he does. Unless DawN swings into a minion? I'm assuming the Crush gets played here every time, even if it trades.
I think even if he swings into a minion, Savage Roar off the top is GG.
It's not right. He goes down to 11, and then Roar is 6 plus. Oh yeah, yeah. With the
Exactly.
hero powers,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. Oh my gosh. So FroStee, it's not just the Roar out for lethal. There is Fungal Fortunes into Roar. I don't think Overflow into Roar does it.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got the cycle. One chance for Fungal or Savage Roar. We see FroStee stressed out. It is not it. The worst one possible. He can survive from his perspective by killing the Crush.
I mean, you take it because you can still hit Overflow off the top. Maybe you've got a chance.
So slim.
So close. Still not game, somehow.
But it has to be, right? If DawN just plays, say, Varanus here, or even the Feywing, sure, and save Varanus for worst case Mount Seller into... If he thinks that card is Mount Seller, into Fungal, into Iron Bark.
Right. What about Zixor Prime off the top? Still doesn't do it.
A valiant effort from you to find outs, but as you completely dumped on me for finding outs for Blitzchung, or attempting to, I'm gonna have to say there's none for FroStee left here.
This is the correct play over Feywing Hero Power as
Oh
well,
no,
just to
the
lock
roar!
out Zixor.
The Roar was one card too deep! This is so painful!
One card away. I'm just telling you, I would have emoted and shown the Savage Roar there every time, just to let my opponent know how unlucky I truly am. But FroStee is keeping a much more level head here. That was so close to you. Can't even get my head around it. And I guess the real big turn there to talk about for DawN, which I'm sure he himself is wrapping his head around now, is the Zephyrus turn. Going for the Frost Nova there to try desperately to hit the Frost Nova. When, again, it's one of those things, it's hard to know, but you kind of should when the Frost Nova is going to be offered.
Yeah. I think it was established that it only offers Frost Nova when Zephyrus can see lethal on the other side, not counting the cards in hand for the opponent, of course. So I think that could have been preventable for for DawN. But it turned out the Shadow Madness was good enough there. I thought it was insane at the time because it allowed DawN to keep pressuring and remove the big threats. But I don't know if that was strictly better than just trying to go for Brawl for a full removal and then refill on the following turn.
Yeah, I think Brawl obviously did give outs to his opponent because the Mount Seller could have survived, Overflow could have come off the top. But I think it lowered the range that you're looking at of things that could have gone wrong. But I think DawN at least needs a moment there to kind of gain his composure once again, because you can just see, even after his win, head in his hands, the stress is so high for this player in particular, with a potential relegation on the line. So we're going to go to a break, let him collect his thoughts, and when we come back, we're going to see if he can get up to a much more respectable 2 and 3, or if he's going to be rejoining FroStee down at the bottom of the pack. See you in a minute. This is the final match of the day here for Asia Pacific Hearthstone Grandmasters. We're of course going to send you over as usual to Europe and Americas with Raven and Sottle and TJ and Frodan respectively. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of weird decks, slightly different metagame in both of those regions, so you're definitely going to want to make sure to check that out. But here, Gia, in good old APAC, we've got DawN versus FroStee with much more of the standard decks, at least from DawN. And FroStee, the only real difference being that Priest in his lineup, which we are still yet to see.
That's right. That's why I've been looking forward to this particular match so much, at least for today. Later on, we'll be seeing Alutemu on Priest. But, you know, I was gearing myself up to deal with a lot of Priest mirrors and long days going into this week because I thought Priest was just such a strong bring. But it turns out it's only 2 people in APAC bringing it. So now I'm looking forward to those Priests showing why it should have been brought. But in a roundabout way, should I be hoping for that? Because if Priest does well, then more people will bring it next week. And then we'll have to cast more mirrors next week.
No. You're basing that assumption on a group of players who adapt to the metagame rather than just jam Druid every week until they high roll with the overgrowths. You're giving much too much credit here, Gia.
You know, I would give credit to those people who stick with Druid in thick and thin. You know what? Sometimes it works.
Sometimes
that.
It does work, and it's going to have to work here.
50% of the time.
Yeah,
it works all the time.
Exactly there. DawN now going to have to get a pretty decent start in order to fight back against the aggression of Highlander Hunter, because this is a matchup that I tested a fair deal in testing, and as you would expect, Gia, from what I found, you want to go super aggressive with the Highlander Hunter, close out the game before they can start doing broken stuff, and 50% of the time, you get there every time.
And this is as good a curve as any for FroStee. He's got the 1-drop, Kefra Stormhammer, and the Scavenger's Ingenuity to draw him a buffed up, ideally, Zixor. But DawN has the goods himself.
He really, really does. The Glowfly off the top is absolutely crucial in this matchup. As we've seen time and time again, FroStee deviating slightly here, going for a less tempo-focused approach, at least in terms of immediate damage. And instead, I think, trying to set up for a Zixor off the top, hopefully. But instead gets the Diving Griffin.
You know what? You and I both said ideally or hopefully Zixor, but this Griffin is presenting a lot of damage.
That's true.
6-3, I guess. A lot more fragile now that the nerfs have come into play. I was thinking it still had 4 health, which is just out of range for Druid, but at 3 health, it definitely doesn't seem all too durable.
I think the main point to really bear in mind is that it's still going into a Fate Glowfly turn or an Overgrowth turn. You know, 4 mana is where the Druid wants to start doing broken stuff.
Right. And just being able to get that down to make it a little bit annoying for DawN to go for this is a good enough upside. And FroStee can go for the Coin Zephrys Lightning Storm here if he wants. And you know what? With his hand, it works out pretty fine. The 2 Overload isn't too punishing for him because his hand is full of 3-cost minions anyway.
True. I like it. I think while the previous game we could have seen a deviation, now from FroStee, these 2/2s came down too quickly. He has not enough development. He just has to do it.
But think of other options from Zeph. Missing something. We're always seeming to miss something with Zephrys. It could, on this turn without coin, give Betrayal. Not very good.
Right. Or you could go Hero Power and then hope to hit Backstab to take out 2 of them if you don't want to coin and hit the Overload off of Lightning Storm. But that sounds significantly worse.
That just sounds like the same as Betrayal removing 2 of them. So, alright, FroStee is determined to hold on to this Zephrys. Still remove 3 of them if he wants.
Yeah. Which is not bad.
But it's far off from good, in my opinion.
Yeah. There are multiple punishes available for DawN now, be it the Starfall on its own, looks pretty good to be honest, or of course the Power of the Wilds, which are also devastating.
With this Moonfire as well. I don't even think DawN needs to take any trades here. Okay, maybe you kill off the Sharpshooter because it helps clear boards. But I wasn't seeing a particular reason to clear off a 2-2 as well.
Corruptor, I think, is the big one, which would be a pretty big punish, value trading you twice.
Sure, basically Corruptor.
And the real benefit of this play for DawN as well is that not only does it put a very powerful play onto the board, it also sets up afterwards to go for the overflow, to just repopulate everything that he lost along the way. It's insane.
And for FroStee now, the turn is looking like Corrosive Breath plus
Desert Spear?
Desert Spear?
Or Scale Rider? Yeah.
The problem with the Scale Rider is that it's always getting traded down by either a 3-1 or a 3-2.
Or a Bulk Beam.
Or you had to commit the Corrosive somewhere other than a 3-3. It just doesn't line up cleanly no matter which way you slice it. And DawN now has the second Glowfly. And this one surely will get eaten up by Zephyrus.
Yeah, Zephyrus plus, whatever you want it to be.
But there's also,
likely Shadow Flame.
There's also reason for going for Overflow here. He won't overdraw, he heals up that one Glowfly.
I think the benefit of this, though, is you say if you don't have Zephyrus, the game is over on the spot. And if you do, I'm still in the lead.
Yeah, you can still go Overflow. And this way, 2 minions actually survive past Zephyrus Shadow Flame.
Yeah, Zephyrus Chaos Nova isn't available yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shadow Flame, the best you can do here. Frost Nova was interesting, but he didn't quite have the follow-up to really benefit from board locking DawN. Here we go. We the fourth person salty clapping in APAC. It's just our thing now, Derek.
FroStee with the hummingbird style of BM. I'm personally a big fan of that one.
And the 7 health is so awkward for the Tiamat. It can't even go rush Wind Fury to deal with both of them now.
It's just an absolute disaster.
Winds of the south.
Is it now just Divine Shield taunt?
But you can go rush Wind Fury for a clear.
On one minion.
Yeah.
Oh, this seems awful. But that is a stellar top deck for DawN.
I think he's just got
lethal. He does, of course,
anyway.
just have lethal. Yep.
Still a great top deck for if we wanted to keep playing.
Starfall for the single target removal is just the way you play the card these days.
Yeah, exactly. This is the new metagame here. You clap, and then you Starfall your opponent's one minion. As 2 games to 0 goes to DawN. But again, look at the pressure that this man is under. No celebrating whatsoever. Head in his hands. Just thinking, this is all going to go wrong now. He is expecting it to go wrong.
And I don't know if that's exactly what's going through DawN's mind. I want to hope that he is not in that negative mental space, because that can be so detrimental to your game plan. I just hope it's him saying, all right, let's get through this one more. Because I think that's also a valid expression, instead of like, oh no, I'm going to lose now. It's going to happen. Come on, Derek. Don't be so pessimistic.
I'm English. You're literally asking me to not breathe there, Gia. But with the last deck being Warrior, I think I am justified in being pessimistic for FroStee, at the very least, if not for DawN. Sorry, the Druid as the remaining deck there. No, the Warrior.
It's Warrior.
Yes,
that was
yes,
just
sorry.
a small graphical error.
Yeah, confused myself there. But it is the Warrior. I was right the first time, left for DawN, which I think is just in such a premium position up against all of FroStee's lineup. The only arguably bad matchup, I think, is the Priest and maybe the Hunter. But even then, I'd be skeptical to call that anything worse than like a just over 50% for the Priest, for the Hunter.
Okay, we are going to talk about Priest versus Warrior because that is what's up next. And now, if we're talking about the favored positions in this matchup, my theory on how to approach this is that if the Priest experts say it is extremely favored, right? They say heavily favored.
Yeah.
And then the Warrior players probably say slightly favored for Warrior. If you average those out, it's probably still slightly favored for the Priest.
I think
that for logic.
Yeah, I think I agree. That because always the deck that you're playing, if you're a very high level player playing this out on ladder, you're probably going to win with whatever deck you're playing. It doesn't really matter who's favored because you're just better than your opponent. But here in Grandmasters, hopefully at least, we are going to see a more accurate representation of the matchup when played at a very high level on both sides. But I think the general idea is here for FroStee with the Priest is that you have everything that you want against Warrior to be able to overcome all of their different avenues of attack. You have plenty of removal for if they go wide or if they go tall. You have plenty of healing for if they go for the burn plan. And you also have plenty of ways to pressure them so they don't have all the time in the world to just amass their ultimate combo.
And most importantly, you can hero power their face so they can't battle rage for one more card. Of course, that is not really a huge thing in this matchup, but I also want to point out the utility of Shadow Madness. The Warrior is running the egg version. That can be pretty backbreaking if you just buff your egg to 3 attack or 2 attack. But for DawN, and I think for most of APAC, the egg version has fallen out of fashion, except for FroStee and I think Tyler, which coincidentally are 2 of the players I think that have more practice partners outside of Asia Pacific than the rest of the field.
But it's got to be said, at the start here, FroStee has a very respectable start. Just hitting the Disciple is not bad at all to get the pressure rolling. But DawN, with the weapons in his own right, can start building up to something mighty powerful fairly quickly indeed.
Yeah, he's got this green skin in the list naturally, which we've seen a lot of players cut because it messes with the consistency of end card drawing into risky skipper. But I would say is very powerful in this type of matchup where probably game plan A is to curve out and smack him in the face.
So as DawN, you are obviously expecting, I think, on turn 4 to see 3/6 Dragon come down.
A Weaver?
Yeah. Exactly. I was testing you. You passed there, Gia. Well done.
I forgot the name of Skyvateer, so it's all good.
But I think even if that comes down, this is still fine to just start drawing the Pirates, because in this situation, even though the Livewire Lance is the one that's buffed by the cash, overall, the Pirates are just more important to start thinning out of it.
You see DawN go up to full hand space. He had the opportunity to buff up the Ankar with the Captain Greenskin, but I think he might be thinking that because he's already got a risky skipper in hand, maybe not prioritizing drawing the Pirates so much as buffing the already stronger weapon, the one that gives him more immediate tempo.
Okay, Mind Games is something to develop here, if not much. And he gets the best minion in the deck! Hello?
Grom. Only Grom. Oh wait, there's a Deathwing as well, but that is definitely one of the best ones.
Okay, he gets a good minion!
Well.
Oh. What is even the response now for DawN?
They'll just go for green skin. Tell FroStee, trade this yourself.
Oh, that's so bad.
It is so bad into time rip, and that's another reason why DawN didn't coin it out last turn, just walking directly into FroStee's time rip.
I mean, it's everything. If it's not time rip, it's trade plus penance with the mummy, or it's the Shadow of Death. It's just a 0% chance that the green skin sticks.
He could start by smacking the Blood Boil, and if he gets rush or damage lucky, he can kill it with the Corcoran. It looks so gross no matter which way you slice it.
It looks so gross.
And so I am kind of just defaulting back to this green skin hit base, and then
you do not have time for
turns.
risky skipper, my friend. You do not have anywhere close enough time.
I think he was going for a skipper Corcoran trade, but that would buff the Blood Boil because it would kill the Grand Mummy, so it wouldn't work either.
That was a brutally hard turn, Gia, to find the right line.
Yeah.
But again, DawN going with green skin and then not swing. It's again just time restraints. Obviously, you didn't want to overdraw a card, but
Right. Yeah. I don't think we can be too hard on him for time restraints. I think that ended up being deliberate. Now he can deal with the Blood Boil. It is so painful. But at least this is against Priest, where you're not worried about being burst to death. A lot of the times the damage they have is face up. It is what's on board.
So risky skipper is my first thought on this turn as well. Risky Skipper Skyver tier does allow for a 4-mana Blood Boil Brew, which is okay.
Yes, and also just pull it off with his 5-wire lands. Deliberately holding on to the Corkron because that's the one that can go face, and also it is one of the best ways to burst out a beast. Oh my gosh!
Someone's gotta lead the charge.
It's just insane, Gia.
That just has rush when it
Yeah.
gets proc. The Shadow Madness for the nice easy clear here. And that's a skipper used for DawN, the other one in the deck because he wasn't able to fish it out with Ankar.
Yeah. And now we're looking at a Battle Rage that's not doing anything, Rampage that's not doing anything, the Bloodsworn that's not doing anything.
Okay. The Rampage could do something with the War Maul onto Skyvateer, Rampage, and he could copy it this turn.
Okay, yeah.
As well.
That's something.
The best board development.
Yeah, by miles.
And you just concede that the Karj is going to trade and give him a free Blood Boil at some point.
I guess the main thing is that it is in that 4 damage breakpoint that you want to be in against Priest.
And he's also, I guess, just building a board where the Karj can't just trade in and die. Holding on to Bloodsworn for the Corkron. He draws Inner Rage. That is so much damage, actually.
True.
Not the Rampage. That is like 22 plus the weapon. Sorry, it is 18 plus which is 22.
I guess that's what he's clearly building towards then, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. If he can just hold on.
So Murazon now is pretty powerful. It develops a nice little board, but the problem, of course, for FroStee is trying to mitigate damage as much as possible.
You think this is your time?
That's the Lackey, the 110, and a Bomb Wrangler in this. Bomb Wrangler, very significant on FroStee's side too. It puts him a bit closer to lethal.
And even though DawN had an out for lethal there, with a Inner Rage off the top,
Yeah.
it is looking like I think he's going to have to deviate over to an Armorsmith plan
I would agree.
just to gain enough health.
Armorsmith, and then he could go for a decent Battle Rage.
True.
Drawing 3 cards.
Double time and double pay.
Okay. He's deviating now.
Flaws
There's
of
still another
strength.
Bloodsworn and Rampage in the deck.
This, of course,
This
gives
decision-
Rush to
Yeah.
the extra one, which is huge.
Yeah. Very well spotted. But now he won't have mana for Armorsmith. So it looks like he's just gonna trade down the Murazond. Oh man. Painful to watch. But he had to do it just to stay alive.
And you do, at the very least, know that there is an extremely limited amount of burst in Priest at the moment. Okay, okay. Doesn't overdraw a card either. Whoa! That's almost
Galakrond?
lethal. Or is it not fully invoked yet? Okay, not quite yet.
Is not. But he can go death, take a lot of trades. He can clear the rest with Galakrond.
Do you start with Soul Mirror? And trade away one of your
Okay.
one, you know, the 1/1 into the 1/1
Yeah.
first.
Is that good enough? Okay, I guess it does set up the best board for the counter lethal.
Right.
Then he can still death one and then trade away the Karj to give the
Exactly.
Blood Boil to kill the other.
Well, the other one just dies, right? Everything dies except for the one
True.
5/9.
I don't think he even needs to go for a Soul Mirror.
Yeah.
Just take the Karj and death one. And then Sure, he could just develop the Galakrond as well.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't maximum tempo possible on that turn, but this gives him more removal options should he need that later on as well.
Little Dragon, great follow-up as well. So rough for DawN. Second skipper, nowhere in sight.
The benefit is, though, by having held onto the coin, he does still have the possibility for Grom, Inner Rage, Coin, Bloodsworn on 10 mana
Okay.
onwards,
All
which
right.
is all of a sudden 24 damage, 26 with the weapon, which is technically lethal in the next couple of turns.
You're right. FroStee has penance, but he doesn't have the natural hero power.
Yep.
So for DawN, should he just be working towards drawing that exactly, like thinning out the deck by using his Corsair Cache to get the other live wire lands?
Definitely something to consider. He, of course, needs to worry about not dying in the first place, though.
He only hasn't accounted for the Pirate from the Skyvateer that FroStee generated. Otherwise, FroStee hasn't stolen anything from DawN. So very low odds for worst.
Double time and double pay.
I think it's very deliberate that he's holding on to this coin for exactly the combo you mentioned. But Apotheosis!
Ooh.
That is huge. It is so huge. He just deaths away this Blood Boil
Yeah.
plus his own.
I mean, at this point,
Okay,
I'm struggling.
Weaver as well.
Yeah, struggling to see a way back in here for DawN, to be honest. He needs to find a way to kill off a huge minion when you stick the Apotheosis onto the Blood Boil.
There's just no way.
We are all bound.
Okay, there's maybe Corsair Cache into Live Wire Lance, into Ethereal Lackey, into
Right.
Execute. That is too many intos for it to seem actually feasible. And even then, there's the other minions, and he's just not gotten enough damage to go for the big combo that we were talking about.
Yeah, 25 damage if Inner Rage were to come off the top would be available. And
Hey,
that
that's
is a
way to
potential
clear.
clear.
It's a guaranteed clear.
It is a
And it
guaranteed clear.
survives! At 1 HP!
Okay.
I keep forgetting that people include this card when they cut the eggs.
Well,
Anyway, not too worrisome for FroStee, of course.
oh, Thought Steel Gear.
That could just be lethal! From his perspective. I think we've seen... No, there's the other Cork run. Is he running too? Yeah!
Oh my god. Sure, develop your biggest thing.
Huh? More on. As if DawN needed... Oh my this is too funny. Too funny.
And now, Gia, have we finally met the end for DawN?
Not quite yet. He's got to draw from this Battle Rage.
And then he could go Grom Inner Rage trade.
If he gets Risky Skipper, he could just play Risky Skipper Coin Grom. And that trades.
Sure.
Or he could go for Skipper Armorsmiths and just leave the thing up but gain a bunch of armor.
Yep.
Either way, I'm looking at Rage into exactly the last Skipper as DawN's out. Or the Inner Rage, as you said, for trade.
Okay, he's seeing armor up and then swing to try and find Execute off of an Ethereal Lackey.
That seems much less likely.
Or just hero up power
All
pass.
right.
Okay.
He's saving
Which
the
is
Rage.
GG.
Yeah, because there is the Inner Rage in hand. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can see DawN's thought process there, though. He was saving that weapon and just hoping to survive that turn to do everything all at once, hoping to catch FroStee off guard, top deck Risky Skipper, and go off with the Groms and the Battle Rage, etc. But didn't quite work out there. Just that early Blood Boil. from the mind games ended up dealing DawN so much damage. He had to face tank it twice, and then it went face once, I think.
Yeah, it was basically just an absurd amount of damage for Priest here, which all came off the back, of course, of the mind games for just an absurd swing. I think the real thing for FroStee was how he could have maybe solidified his chances to lock out the game right at the end there, where, of course, he could have got himself above that crucial breakpoint of like the 22 with Korkron or the 24 with Grom, Inner Rage, and the Bloodsworn Mercenary, which were some potential outs for DawN along the way. But for the most part, I think it was a good understanding there from FroStee that you're basically playing a tempo matchup there while trying to remove along the way.
Yeah, if Priest is simply removing what Warrior does without developing their own minions, you just give Warrior all the time in the world to go for those combos, which we kept talking about. There were tons of outs for DawN there, but because FroStee had the early tempo, forced DawN onto an early risky skipper defensively, not even to gain armor, just to remove boards, and he wasn't able to draw enough with Battle Rage. FroStee had the time to develop and make sure that he killed DawN before the OTK came into play.
The big one, though, is out of the way now for FroStee. The good matchup, as the Priest players would have you believe it, don't believe a word they say, up against the Warrior. And now it is only the Druid and the Hunter left remaining up against the Warrior. The Druid, I think we can both agree, feels decidedly favored for the Warrior, but the Hunter feels a little bit closer around that mid mark, which is why FroStee's going with it first.
And right off the bat, we see the Dino Tamer brand keep. I love it. I think that is part of the win condition. Of course, it involves having a good curve to begin with, but so often the brand can be backbreaking or just game-ending on the spot that I think you're also running enough early game that it's fine to keep it, especially at the point.
Yeah, it's obviously not a direct comparison, I think, to the Mount Seller and Druid, but the general idea is the same, is that the majority of your deck does the same thing, which is just kind of, for Druid, removal in the early game, and for Hunter, just development in the early game. So you may as well keep the one Power Spike card for a little bit later on, and so I think this is very heads up.
But speaking of curving out, DawN has just hit the goods. He has the Sky Raider into Corsair Cash, generates the Dread Corsair, which can come down for cheap with this Livewire Lance equipped next turn.
Yeah, he's going to be decidedly ahead on board.
FroStee's drawn his Imprisoned Felmaw now, and one thing I've learned about this card is the earlier it gets played, the better, and it's exponentially worse every turn after turn 2 that you don't play it. But the downside, of course, is you don't play Scavenger's Ingenuity this turn, which means the Zixor is one farther away.
And he also has to imagine, what is my turn 3 going to be, given that he has not perfect information, but very likely his opponent is going to play Livewire Lance. And if he goes for the Felmaw, both the Scale Rider and the Diving Griffin are weak plays on the following turn into a Livewire Lance.
Agreed. And DawN has
Whereas
topped
Zixor
that.
would have been good.
DawN is on just a very problematic minion for FroStee to deal with. I don't know how he can outside of Zephyrus, or like if he had a Primordial Explorer already on board. No reason to play the weapon there for DawN if he wasn't going to swing into a minion anyway.
So FroStee could start chipping away with like Diving Griffin on it now.
Yikes!
I don't know, because the thing is, that sets up for potentially clearing it a little bit later if the Felmaw attacks in, because by playing this here, it's just eaten up by the weapon 100% of the time.
Blood and plunder.
But was it Griffin over a drawing for Zixor there, which also sets up for the clear?
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know, I just hate the sound of your turn being 3 mana 4/1 damage traded into their 1/10.
It does suck. I will not make the argument that it doesn't suck, but so did that.
Alright, fair enough. And I think this is one of the situations where you actually really didn't want the Felmaw to go face.
Yeah.
The 3/3 was probably the worst target, but FroStee really wanted to damage this Warmaul because there's so many potential things that it could pair with. But luckily for FroStee, none of them are there. There's no Rampage or Inner Rage. And if you just copy, say, a 1/9, it is not particularly threatening.
Exactly. And as long as FroStee isn't taking too much damage in the early game, he can start to do some pretty powerful things as the game progresses. Obviously, Coin Varanus is looking pretty scary, Coin Dino Tamer is looking scary, but also, with the Scavenger's Ingenuity and Zixor in hand, I'm looking at a very good chance that he gets 6/6s coming down on turn 8.
Could see that as well.
Someone's gotta lead the charge.
He's just got to figure out how he wants to allocate his mana in the following turns, because if we're going to see Zixor next turn, it's like he's floating 2.
On wings of evil.
I think we're more likely to just see either the Daywing or Varanus. But for DawN here, yet another day and another Deathwing. DawN and Flurry really are the best of friends.
Yeah, I know. Well, Flurry was on a whole nother level. DawN is yet the lowly Padawan before Flurry's full Jedi.
Okay, so Zixor does look like it lines up pretty well against this Bomb Wrangler, and FroStee could track to find something else to do alongside it.
Is that better than Coin Varanus to decimate the health total of all the minions, and then even take a value trade if you want to?
Because I'm tunneling a little bit on what you said about the Zixor and then draw the Prime with the Scavenger's Ingenuity, but I'm not seeing a way that the mana lines up perfectly unless he could have killed the Zixor this turn, because he still really wants to coin Bran next turn.
Yeah. It's close. I mean, I'm far from sure that it was the right play at all. It was just pretty good there.
Stormhammer. Well, the freeze is just pretty good because they have a 3/1 by Fire Lance. But this immediately takes down the Bomb Wrangler.
It
Looks like it's the case of FroStee's not finding the time to play all of the good things, but he has committed to being able to coin out Dino Tamer Bran, which I like. It ties into the Stormhammer equip really nicely.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't tie in quite so nice to Stormhammer Face, which looked pretty juicy indeed. But I guess the thinking is, of course, that he wouldn't have lethal anyway set up, so you can just slow it down a little bit.
So DawN can go for Armor Smith and start trading down if you like.
Yep.
Looking at the heroic strike, because the cash seems
Same.
so slow here.
I mean, you can use it to find you Ankar, to find Skipper, which is a pretty long trail of thought you have to go down before you're actually finding anything decent.
Not that far off, but the thing is with DawN's list, Skipper's not even guaranteed playing the greenskins.
True.
Greenskin and Predators as well. I definitely like getting down the Armor Smith this turn. Health total was getting a little too close for comfort.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee at all that FroStee will actually be able to clear it off on the following turn, because if he is setting up for Coin Bran, which I think you can be expecting at this point for DawN, given that Coin's still in hand, a card was kept in the mulligan all this time, this is a pretty big incentive to not go Coin Dino Tamer Bran.
Instead, I think FroStee's got a pretty good deviation available with the Coin Zixor and Evasive Failing. That puts his Stormhammer at immune durability again, and he can trade down the Armor Smith with the Zixor. His board looks just pretty good, given that DawN hasn't drawn any of his attack buff cards, and then he can keep swinging face with the Stormhammer.
I look at that a lot. You are expecting things to start going wrong soon,
Right.
given that as soon as they find a Battle Rage or draw another weapon, they have a draw off the Skyver tier as well. Things are going to start getting scary, and they're going to gain a lot of armor. But if you don't kill the Armor Smith, you can just kind of pack it up right there, I think.
The Battle Rage, I think, is not actually that scary if he developed not the Brand, but the Zixor plus Feywing. Because only one minion could be damaged without dying against those two. But he's just left DawN with an Armor Smith now. All the initiative on how he wants to do the trades. But the upside, of course, is that there's a King Crush that needs answering on the board.
Yeah, and to be fair, he has information about the hand. There's one discovered spell, one discovered dragon. Neither of these things look especially powerful. But even having said that,
Yeah. Gonna see this Blood Boil Brute come down. I was looking at playing it and copying, but I also agree that the Battle Rage activation is so important. And there is Skipa.
oh, how do you even do this? Because obviously King Crusher's got to die on this turn is a pretty big priority.
Going Skipper, Blood Boil, and that will just kill things along with the trade of the Guided Cure.
Okay.
He gains a lot of armor in the meantime.
So Kobold Lucky trade and Inner Rage? I just want to expend that. Okay.
Holding onto these Inner Rages for Korkron and Grom.
He could have used one and the Shoot Lucky though, right? I think there was a better way to sequence that at the end.
Maybe. Could have had one more minion alive?
Well, I think he could have had the Bloodborne alive. Sorry, the Blood Boil instead of the 1/3 here.
Sure, if you buff the Warmaul and trade it.
Exactly.
Always tough turns. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize the Zixor was unbuffed. That's the reason why he didn't play it last turn.
Ah, right, okay.
Gavender's still in hand.
He could have still used it to take out the Armor Smith. It wasn't a ridiculous way to go about it at all.
True, the double trade with the Stormhammer. Well, he is just gonna consolidate the board control now, but DawN's health total is slipping out of reach for FroStee. This Deathwing looks pretty solid.
Yeah, it's looking pretty insane, to be perfectly honest. Swing the board massively in your favor and demand an answer of the Hunter.
But that will mean FroStee can pull the buffed up Zixor, unless it's the draw off the top.
I wonder.
True, but then he's facing down a Deathwing.
True,
I mean,
yeah.
Bone Wraith is
I've
something, I suppose, yeah.
Thing is, how does he even clear it?
Yeah,
Without
Varanus
face
swing.
tanking right now.
Oh.
He's a mana off of being able to play the Desert Spear alongside Varanus. And that. Oh man. Bone Wraith in a dream? But if he plays Bone Wraith, he's
literally.
just dead.
He is just dead, and he kind of has to know that he's just dead as well.
However, if he face tanks this, he's dead to Korkron or Grom, just plain. Oh my gosh. I think the best hope from Frosty's perspective is just the Bone Wraith hero power, but we can see first half gets taken down by the Warmaul, second half taken down by either Ankar or Inner Rage.
Oh, it breaks my heart, Gia.
So tough to watch.
Warmaul Challenger.
4-card combo.
Yeah, works perfectly here. Ankar, double Inner Rage, however you want to sequence it here. That works too.
Sure.
Stop giving me heart palpitations, DawN. And there we have it. FroStee, he gives us a wave as he goes down to 0-4. To be perfectly honest, this is going to be extremely difficult for him to pull back now, and he knows it.
Wave. Of course, he's done for the day, but the way his expression looked, it was almost as if he was waving goodbye. Grandmasters. 0-4, Division B. That's almost near guaranteed relegation. So tough to watch.
Yeah, we'll have to run it through. I think he's not guaranteed quite yet, but like you said, the fact that he now has a bad tiebreaker against DawN, who is going to be one of his main competitors, down at the bottom of the rankings, and at best now, if he wins every single one of his series, he can finish 3-4. I think he, more than anyone else here, just believes that his run has come to an end.
And that is really tough to listen to. How do you toe the line between being optimistic for your mental state going into the remaining matches? Because as you said, 3-4 is still possible to be above other scores. Let's say if Samuel Tao and DawN continue to lose. from here on out.
Yeah.
But also, you have to be realistic at some point because for people, this is a career. Grandmasters is a source of livelihood, and if you don't come prepared with a plan, that can just really ruin things going forward.
Yeah, it's tough stuff for FroStee, but like you said, there's still some small sliver of chance. But on the happier side, taking a look at the standings now, of course, congratulations to DawN. That felt like a much more level-headed approach there. The Warrior came a little bit close a couple of times, I think, to getting the better of him, but he was able to bring things up now to 2 and 3, and all of a sudden, DawN really isn't even looking that bad.
Yeah, it's moved him pretty much to the middle of the table. We're going to see Staz later on this weekend, and that is potentially his biggest competition for overtaking in the middle there. And even if you're in the middle and free from the relegation zone, it is not all butterflies and roses, because there's that chance for relegating in the relegation bracket. And oh my gosh, I am so surprised to see Surrender potentially in that position as well.
It is some pretty crazy stuff here. Obviously, a slight error there with Possessi moving down below Rivius at this point. So Japan no longer the undisputed champions that they have been in the first 3 weeks of the round robin here. Instead, Possessi, after a couple of blips along the way, it felt like he needs to just take a deep breath going into his next game and kind of go for a similar approach to what DawN's going for here. Because DawN, it felt to me like the last couple of games, or the last couple of series, he's just taking it one game at a time, trying to not get excited or devastated either way, as neutral as possible, and so far it's working out for him.
Yeah, DawN, full seriousness, even though it makes me sad to see DawN not be his jovial self, if that's what he needs to hunker down and just make sure he's playing at his absolute top level, then I will support it 100%.
As will I, Gia. But of course, that was match 5 of the day, which means we are all done here for Asia Pacific, at least. Europe and then Americas is going to follow up shortly after. And as I've said throughout the day, it is going to be a fantastic day of Hearthstone. I, for one, am definitely going to be watching to try and figure out what on earth some of those players are doing with their funky as all heck deck lists, which are nothing like what we have here in Asia Pacific. So unless you have anything left to add, Gia, I'm going to sign us off.
Nothing much more. Just looking forward to more Druid tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day.
Cannot wait, Gia. It never, ever ends. It's like the Malorn of games. Was that the card that keeps shuffling into
that's a Druid card.
Yeah, there we go.
Nice
what a perfect
Derek.
way to end. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye, send you over to Raven and Sottle for Europe. We'll see you tomorrow.